Hello and welcome to the NextGen podcast. I'm Tricia. In today's episode, we spotlight leaders who turn passion into purpose. And if you embody that, then Jenna Williams. So welcome, Jenna.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to talk a little bit about Jenna and then we're going to go into the questions. So first of all, let's just say that as Vice President and SBA Business Development Officer at a Northern California bank, Jenna brings over 2 decades of experience to the financial world, known for her integrity, dedication, and deep client connections. She specializes in guiding business owners through the SBA loan process with clarity and care. Jenna's journey began at 18 working in restaurants, where her natural sales talent quickly emerged. And from there, she climbed through roles in project management and communications before finding her calling in banking. Her career spans major institutions like Wells Fargo, Fremont Bank, and leading to her current leadership role in community banking. But Jenna's story isn't just about business success, it's about resilience. In 2024, she survived a near-death experience, took a 6-month hiatus, and returned stronger than ever, more committed to empowering entrepreneurs and advocating for financial education. An active leader in commercial real estate, women, she served as DEI director and golf chair, championing women in finance and commercial real estate. Recognized by Marquis Who's Who, a finalist in the Empowered Woman Award, and an honoree at the IAOTP Gala in Nashville, Jenna's impact is widely celebrated. She's also a successful real estate investor with a bold goal to own over 20 properties by retirement. Jenna Williams is a force in finance, a mentor, and a shining example of what's possible when grit meets vision. So let's dive into your inspiring journey. Okay. So how about this? Jenna, why don't you just walk us through your professional journey? What early inspirations and pivotal moments led you to your current leadership position at BMO?
That's a good question. So I started at Wells Fargo in 2007. I had been a stay-at-home mom and my children's father got his girlfriend pregnant, so I had to go back to work. I would have never chosen to be a banker and I never knew that that would be my passion. I got to grow doing many different jobs and every switch that I've made of banks has always been to work with someone that was one of my partners in a previous role. So in leaving Wells Fargo, going to Fremont Bank, that was to work for a gentleman that was one of my partners. Heritage Bank was the same as that. And here at BMO was another person that I used to work with. So I've been lucky to develop very strategic partnerships that have paid well in my life. More than just money, but joy in life.
That's wonderful and inspiring as well. So what initially attracted you to the financial services sector and what continues to inspire your work today?
Well, I think when I first started, it was probably money, like many young people. I needed to pay for some children in daycare. And then I started finding out that I loved math and speaking. So, speaking to customers, and I had some great mentors that helped inspire me along the way. I think it's very hard to be a woman in a very male dominated industry. I don't say much about that, but I believe in championing women to be having the same equity in the conversation. So I had some great mentors. There was a quote that I heard very early on in my career, Maya Angelou: people forget what you say, they forget what you did, but nobody ever forgets how you make them feel. And I think because I had been through some traumatic experiences, that just resonated with me, that it was my job to, whether it be my internal partnerships at the bank or my external partnerships, it was my job to never make people feel that.
Wonderful. And I love that quote. It really is something to live by. And it's beautiful that you're embodying that in your actions.
It is at the forefront of a lot of what I do.
Yeah, which is wonderful. Um, so how would you describe your leadership style and how it has evolved through your career?
That's a great one. I think one of my favorite things about BMO, and it's going to sound very marketed, but the mission is boldly grow the good in business and in life, which I embody. But I think you have to be bold. You have to take up space and be okay with that. But there is a balance to that, and take up space, but don't take up too much. I can still remember I had a kindergarten report card where they said to my mom, Jenna is very engaging, but she needs to let other people engage.
Ah,
So I think about that a lot, right? Like, how do you take up space but make space for everybody else? And I think that has helped evolve my leadership style in that sort of equity. Everybody gets equal space by being human, but equal I don't go with because I think people have different biases and opportunities. So I think equity is we all have the right to be here. We all have the right to say what we want to say. And I think that's really my leadership style, whether it's with my children at home or my partners at work. It's everybody has space to be part of the conversation.
that's beautiful. Absolutely. So BMO is known for its innovation and impact. How do you ensure your teams are both future focused and grounded in institutional excellence?
I am lucky to be part of a wonderful team with a lot of great leadership. BMO is a fabulous bank that is taking up more space here on the West Coast, and I'm very excited to be part of the journey. I think one of the most important things I've done here is learn who my internal partnerships are, who does what, and who can I rely on. I think technology has taken us to great places, but there is still something very much to be said for the human component. So having important human interactions and being able to rely on people and say, hey, I'm good at this, you're good at that. Can you help me solve this? And that collaboration really goes far.
That's beautiful. And I also noticed that I was saying BMO and it's BMO, so sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It happens often. Yeah, it's BMO.
Well, from now on, I will definitely say that. Okay, so can you share a defining leadership challenge you faced and what it taught you?
Sure. I think it was actually very early on in my banking career. I had a woman boss that was very tough, but she had a really important line that she taught me, which is men can be lazy, but women can't. And I know that sounds weird, but it taught me that you have to work. Sort of no complaints, no whatever. The job is the job. Don't complain, just get it done. Don't make excuses. Don't get let things get in the way. If you have to get to from A to B, it's your job to get there. And so I think that that really motivated me from a different perspective, I think, than what she meant it as. But I was realizing that I didn't know how to do a lot of things. And it allowed me to go and sort of create a team internally at that time to help me accomplish the job. There were the tools and resources at the bank. I just didn't know how to use them at that time. And I think leadership is very much about a being willing to say, I don't know how. And that's hard for a lot of us, but it's that sort of growth beginner mindset. I don't know how to do this, but I'm confident I can find the people that do.
Hmm. That's definitely a beautiful way to connect with your team as well, I'm sure. And the idea that women, I mean, it's a realistic look at, what it's like for a woman in the workplace now and how it's evolved in your life. Um, so what does creating an inclusive and high-performing culture mean to you, and how do you build it within your teams?
That's fair. I believe that, again, I'm going to go back to equity. I love that word because as a real estate person, equity in properties is something that I think about equity being everybody has space, right? So everybody gets to make an equitable contribution. And I think that you have situations where there are different personalities. Like, for example, I'm a total extrovert. It's easy for me to take up space. Some people may not be able to do that. They may be uncomfortable getting out there. So I think it's being willing to ask questions. One of my favorite lessons is actually the guy who ran Toyota for a couple of years. They called it the five whys. Your job is to go into every conversation and find out the five whys. Ask questions, be willing to learn. Again, I think that beginner mindset is very important to not say, I know it, maybe I don't, and everybody has a different view. So asking questions, I think, is what allows people to take up space, and people just perform better when they feel that they're seen and heard. When they feel that they have a place in the conversation, they generally tend to live up to the standard.
I have a follow-up question to that. So
Okay.
you talked about someone who is, might not speak up normally, and but then asking them questions. What if someone really, you can tell that they have something to share, but they are having a difficult time speaking up? What exactly do you do with that type of person to draw them out?
That's fair. So I learned this technique because I have a daughter who's very introverted. And by asking questions and saying, okay, I may not understand where you're coming from, but this will help me. And so asking questions and focusing on why. And then I think what helps them in the future versus that initial conversation is to ask a follow up question. Okay, they just shared something that was probably very hard for them to do, so tell me why you feel that way, or what does that mean to you? It sort of gives them the honor to have that space and they will feel more comfortable next time. But yes, I think asking questions, even introverted people have something to say, but they usually don't know how to take up the space like a social butterfly like myself. So I think asking the questions really helps them feel that they're okay.
And that's a lovely way to make sure that people, like everyone's heard at the table. And I love that. Um, so how do you approach mentorship, and what impact has it had on your career and those you've guided?
Great question. One of my favorites is Bob Proctor, and he said, have a mentor, be a mentor, but a mentor is somebody who realizes potential in you that you don't realize in yourself. So I have a lot of people that I like to mentor and help and lift people up. But I think it's very important for me to have those too, like a person you can go to and ask questions and say, again, hey, I don't know a lot about this, but finding that expert who can help me learn and approaching it in a way to learn. So I think having a mentor and being a mentor, it's sort of that thinking of myself like in the middle. I'm gaining knowledge, but I'm giving knowledge. And I feel like that's the right flow of energy.
I love that. And the idea that it's creating a flow of energy, which then can probably help you in a lot of different ways, um, both to communicate with your mentor and then also the mentees that you connect with.
There
That,
was a gentleman who did a podcast that I saw a couple months ago. I mean, he said people are like batteries or vacuums. You got to think about your energy. Either they're a battery that charges you or a vacuum that drains you. Surround yourself with batteries. So, to me, a lot of things are energy. And does it make my energy stronger or weaker? Right? Is it expansive or contractive?
hmm. So that brings up something interesting. What if somebody is a battery drain? How do you manage that?
Hmm. We all have to be around and work with people we don't like, whether it's in personal or business. And I think you can set those energetic boundaries easily by, sort of giving them love and peace and wishing them well, but you don't have to carry that with you or let it take from you. One of my favorite quotes is actually from Tupac Shakur, of all things, and it's just because we're not friends doesn't make us enemies. I'm bigger than that. I hope you eat, but you can't eat at my table.
Hmm,
So it's wish you well, but I don't have to break bread with you.
that is fair enough. I like that too because it's preserving your energy, is preserving the integrity of yourself and then also of the group.
I was raised in a very religious family where it was do unto others. So I think that's still in me from childhood that don't harm anyone. You can do what you want, but if it's harming someone, you probably shouldn't do that.
I like that. Um, let's see. What trends do you believe will shape the future of financial services in the next 3 to 5 years?
It's a great question. I get asked something like that a lot. I think that there is a lot of room in this tech and AI that processes and procedures are being, let's say, monetized, improved, efficient. But I think that it is shifting the focus where human capital is more important than ever.
Hmm.
And so I think that while, yes, there are a lot of jobs and processes that AI will improve and eliminate, and yes, companies will replace the human capital with that process and procedure. So I think that the human capital piece, it's still kind of who you know. I think that will become much more valuable than ever before.
Hmm.
But there is a lot of cycles in tech and real estate. It happens. In 20
Exactly.
years, I've seen quite a few.
Well, so then, how about, so you've just talked about, where we are. Can you give a little more insight about, you said there are a lot of cycles. Oh, where might we be going with this? Any
Uh,
ideas?
well, first of all, if I could predict it, I would probably be Warren Buffett, right? And we would be having a very different conversation. But
True.
that being said, the world according to Jenna, I think we are at a cycle after the pandemic, the low rates, all of that, tariffs coming in, you name it. I think we are at a place where, in my view, the stone wheel is moving out of the mud. So we're going very slowly, and probably this time next year, 27, we will probably see the rates come down and the economies make some shifts. But I think we are moving into another cycle where, in every cycle, there's sort of a good and bad. There's always some industry that just gets decimated, and there's always some industry that thrives. So I think it's that cycle. The way that I see it is, if you were to, let's say, have a teeter totter and you put risky on one side and investing, conserving on the other, cash flow moves back and forth between the seesaw teeter totter all day long, right? Cash flow is how things get paid. And if you go too risky or too conservative, what happens? It goes like this and somebody falls off. And that's what happens in cycles. And so that's why a lot of banks get conservative and try to stay in the middle so we don't go falling off. But I think that it's just a balance of where in between risky and conservative do people want to lie. There's always a player in the game. There's always a deal to be made. It's just, what are you willing to give that? I guess I'll end that with my favorite line in banking and sales is, there are three ways to do things: fast, good, and cheap. Pick two.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, I know what two I would pick. But as far as the teeter totter, that is a great image for people who are trying to get a sense of, financially, individually, what to do, and then also collectively what's happening with us. Um, so let's see. With that, how do you stay centered and motivated in your high pressure role? Are there personal practices or principles that help guide you?
That is a great question. So I had a wonderful mentor maybe 10 years ago, that said, hey, as you're growing your network and becoming who you are, how do you reduce the noise, right? That was a big one. And he said, pick three values that are yours that you're going to stick to. And no matter what happens in that situation, pick those values. And at that time, it was, I didn't want to harm anybody. I didn't want to be looked at as one spectrum of how women can get labeled in business. And I didn't want to be looked at as somebody who was lazy or couldn't be depended on. And so, no matter what situation came up, those were my values. And then when I survived, which by the way was a stroke bad enough, I had to learn to walk again. So I had to pick some very different values. And I started looking at the neuroscience of the brain and read a lot about that. And the big one was, the mind gets overwhelmed. So, for an example of that is, say somebody hands you a big plate of pasta and you're not starving. That might be overwhelming, and you're like, how do I eat that? But if you take two scoops and put it on the little bread plate, you can probably eat your whole bread plate. But the brain does that, it gets overwhelmed. So my values became, how do I pick a long term goal and figure out what are the little steps to get there? So, what is manageable for me today? What is manageable in a month? And what is manageable in a year? And so I really got that breakdown. That became a value. And the other one was just to not worry about other people's energy. And so my time and my peace became very important. And I started thinking about, how do I manage to get my work done without working until midnight? And so I just developed some rules for myself that I don't bend on. It has to do with how many meetings I accept, when I check my emails, when I get back to things. It was a transition for me to figure out things were okay with a 24 to 48-hour response time. It doesn't have to be now. And that protected my peace. And over a year or two, it just became a lot easier to manage. But I think when you start, figuring out how to be at that level is impossible and overwhelming, like that plate of pasta. So, how do I break it down to that little bread plate that I can eat today and manage today? And then maybe tomorrow I'll eat two bowls. You know what I mean? And so that's how I did it.
Yes, and first of all, uh, I'm so glad you're okay, and
Thank you.
you emerged from this incredibly difficult health challenge with this outlook that is so um, positive and proactive, and I admire your resilience.
I thank you for that. I believe it's definitely a mindset thing. Like I said, I learned about the brain and how mindset in the brain works, but I refer to it as my stroke of genius. And they told me I would never walk without a cane and I would never golf again. So every time I go out golfing, I'm like, yeah, take that, doc.
Uh-huh.
But it is a mindset. It is a choice. I hear my mom saying, make good choices.
And you did. One that is serving you well, definitely. And just such a powerful idea that you created this mindset through this challenge. And I'm wondering, let's see, um, your leadership journey has earned widespread recognition across the industry. What does this recognition mean to you, and how does it align with your personal mission and your vision for impact?
Uh, that's great. I'll give you the true, vulnerable, authentic answer is I think it's amazing
You.
to have all that recognition. All the awards that came after the stroke really gave me some personal power to keep going. Like, I think a lot about the story from kids is like the little engine that could. I think I can. I think I can. There were a lot of days that it was like that. But how it aligns with me is there were 6 days laying in a hospital bed where you can't even watch TV because it's a brain injury. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to live the rest of my life like this. No way. So there was a push to do it. And I learned in my neuroscience journey of reading about the brain that the people mostly change when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. Change is uncomfortable. And I think that's part of my journey or my values or where my life is going. I'm willing to be uncomfortable because if I don't like something, if I don't like it enough to change, I'm willing to change it. And that is a mindset.
Yes, and a powerful one too, definitely. Uh, so my next question is following up with that, what legacy do you hope to build within the BMO brand and beyond?
I hope to embody their idea of boldly grow. I love that. And honestly, I'm going to extend that down to my children. I hope they leave a legacy that does greater than me, because that's what we all want for our children.
That's so true. We do want that. And it sounds like your legacy expands through your entire being and life, which is uh, admirable, to be sure. To be sure. Um, so my last question is, what advice would you offer to young women aspiring to lead with purpose and impact their careers?
Think about future you. What does she look like? What does she feel like? What actions would she take? And it's hard to do, but having that clear vision of the future you and what that looks like will help you make the aligned steps in the right direction of who you want to be and where you're going. It is hard in the moment, but it is not hard long term. I think about a picture I saw many years ago, and a picture that said, it was the universe talking, that said, hey, hate to be a spoiler, but everything's going to be okay. Right? And it's hard to have that faith and belief, but believe in yourself. And when you can't believe in you, reach out to future you and believe in her, and she will help you get through it.
Oh, I love that. That is wonderful. And I'm sure that the young women watching this are at least inspired by your story, to be sure. Um, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your personal story and then how it's impacted your career. It truly is inspiring, Jenna. Do you have anything else that you want to share with anyone watching, specifically young women looking to do what you're doing?
I would say I'm going to leave it with one final Maya Angelou quote, and that is, every storm runs out of rain.
That says it. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jenna. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I wish you well in your journey.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. Hope to see you again soon.